Hi Year 12, this lecture is about interviews as a form of sociological research. Essentially an interview is a form of social survey, a bit like a questionnaire. However, because it's face-to-face, an element of social interaction is required between the interviewer and the interviewee, where questions are asked and answered. There are a range of interview styles, from highly structured, which might be something you'd expect in a job interview, where the same questions might be asked to every candidate, to completely unstructured, which are much more likely to flow like conversations or maybe a catch-up in a coffee shop, for example. And in between are semi-structured, where there may be a couple of questions that you want to ask, or a few questions you want to ask, but you allow the conversation to flow, and every now and again you might ask one of your questions to bring the focus back to the interview. Semi-structured are probably one of the most common types of interviews practiced in sociological research. They can be carried out in a range of ways, one-to-one, in groups, or as focus groups, which we discussed before. There are certain advantages to having a one-to-one interview, in the sense they're private, and you can guarantee the anonymity of the person taking part. However, in groups, you may get a wider range of views, but you run the risk of someone dominating the conversation, so you may not actually get truly valid responses from anyone, as they may feel embarrassed or feel that they can't actually respond as they would do normally. And focus groups, as I mentioned before, are predominantly used by companies and political parties to test policies or ideas to see how favourable they may be. Because interviews involve social interaction, there are some issues with this. One of the main one is that the interviewees may be responding to the social situation rather than to the questions themselves. And there are a number of ways that the social interaction may influence the validity of the interview. Now, validity in sociology is truth, the truthfulness of the findings. Are they actually accurate and true and not lies or over-exaggeration? One of the key concerns with interviews is something known as interviewer bias. This is when the interviewer themselves may influence the outcome. This can be done through things such as leading questions, such as, wouldn't you agree that women should not go out to work when they have young children? The respondent would probably look at a question like that and think that the interviewer wants you to respond with an agreement. This is much more likely in structured interviews, where the questions are predetermined by the interviewer themselves. Also, things like body language, facial expression, and the tone of voice may consciously or unconsciously influence the respondent. Imagine you're interviewing someone about bullying, and the person you're interviewing may have actually been a perpetrator of bullying, but by your tone of voice, you might say, "Oh, how do you feel about bullies?" And they would get the impression that you don't like bullies, so they might lie about their involvement in bullying. There's also a problem with the interviewer identifying too closely with the interviewees. And now Oakley, who we've covered, said that she found it very difficult to remain neutral when interviewing women about maternity and childbirth without letting her own opinions and views influence what she was interpreting from her research. Now, positivists would be critical of that, because they would say she'd be allowing her own views or bias to affect the outcome, so therefore her research was not objective. Second problem is the artificiality of an interview. They are not everyday normal situations. People are aware that their responses are being recorded, so they are less relaxed and natural and are less likely to say what they truly think. However, unstructured interviews are much more likely to develop what's known as a rapport. So the respondent may open up and be much more truthful because they feel they can trust the interviewer. All of these issues of social interaction really affect the validity of the interviews, whether you are truly getting the true responses from your respondents. A big issue with interviews is the status and power inequalities of those conducting the interview, the interviewee, those conducting the interview, the interviewer, and the interviewee. They may feel that they are unable to answer honestly. The bigger the inequality in power or status, the greater the influence this will have on validity. So, if an adult is interviewing a child, the child may feel they cannot be completely honest with that adult. There may also be status or power inequalities between the genders, okay, and also ethnic differences, okay. If there is a perceived power or status difference between different ethnic minorities and a white interviewer, it may affect the validity of the respondents. A good example of this is Paul Willis. One of Paul Willis's research methods was observation, but then the other one was interviews, when he interviewed the working class boys that he spent quite a lot of time with. Now, he was clearly an adult, and he was not a member of their subculture, so as a result, we can't be entirely sure that he got the truth from them. They may have been reacting to the power difference between him as an adult and them as children. Cultural differences are a major concern. Most sociologists are predominantly white, they're predominantly highly educated, and as a result, they don't necessarily share the same cultural background of many of the people they research, particularly if they're researching crime and deviance, where you might be getting in touch with a deviant subculture. Misunderstandings may be a huge issue, particularly through the use of language. Remember, the working class are more likely to use a restricted language code. An interviewer is much more likely to speak elaborate code. See if you can annotate which sociologist writes about language codes. It's difficult to know when you're being lied to when the language is different. So Margaret Mead, in her 1943 study on adolescence in Samoa, remember, she argued that the idea of a teenager being someone who was going through a horrible period of puberty with mood swings and were characterized by anxiety was actually socially constructed, because she found that the girls in Samoa didn't experience any of these types of changes. So therefore, what we think of as a moody teenager, is actually a social construction and not a biological fact. Sorry, I digress. Anyway, she was criticised because she couldn't speak the language, so she didn't realise that she'd been deliberately misled about some of the issues, and some of the girls had not wanted to talk openly about puberty with her because they felt embarrassed, but she didn't realise that because she didn't speak the language. Also, researchers working with subcultures have struggled to understand the language, whether it's slang or there actually is a covert language going on that actually the gang uses to communicate above and beyond the head of the researcher. Social desirability effect is very similar to what we call the Hawthorne effect in observation. Essentially, this really will affect the validity when people generally want to be approved of, okay? Nobody would answer a question about racism, for example, if the interviewer was asking, how do you feel about racism? And no one would say, oh, I think it's brilliant, I think it's the way forward, because they know that's not socially desirable, okay? And as a result, the answers may be given to put the respondents in the best light, like, there was that one time when, I might have been a little bit racist, but I was really, really drunk and everybody else was doing it, for example. Interviews don't generally have as many ethical issues as other research methods. By taking part in the interview, effectively they are giving their consent. The interviewee, however, may feel under pressure to answer certain questions, and the interviewer must be careful that they don't push a person to answer a question that they feel uncomfortable about, which may bring up memories of, difficult memories which might cause psychological harm. It's also worth discussing the power inequalities between adults and children when interviewing. It's very difficult to get informed consent in the sense that this person taking part is fully informed at what you're going to be doing with the information and why you are collecting the information. If that person is a child, you have to go through the parents, and that can be quite challenging when studying education. It's key that results should always remain anonymous. And can you think why it's important for interviews to remain anonymous? And have a think about the impact of group interviews and focus groups. And people must be allowed to withdraw or not answer any questions if they want to, okay, which can also affect the validity of the study. The next activities we'll be doing in class, so don't worry about taking notes on these, okay? So don't worry about the slides. We'll be running through them in class tomorrow.